as far as Seamus Kennedy. Hitting it long and hitting it over the bar. First time he's ever scored in the championship, and he does it here in the All-Ireland final and levels up the match with 10.5 minutes gone, 4 points apiece.
Fáilte, a Charge Gael. This is episode 54 of the Rebel Matters podcast, and today's guest on the show is Seamus Kennedy, who played a pivotal role in Tipperary's recent victory over Kilkenny in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final on the 18th of August this year. So Seamus is walking around with a freshly polished Liam McCarthy medal in his back skyrocket. This is definitely a first for the Rebel Matters podcast, having such a recent All-Ireland winner on the show. And there's also a bit of a family connection to this episode as well, because my brother, Carbra O'Carolan, is the strength and conditioning coach for the Tipperary senior hurling team. And also the Cork-based players from the Tip panel have been training with us in Ackley a couple of times a week for the last year or so, which is how I got to know Seamus. I have to say that this conversation with Seamus is the first time that the two of us have spoken to each other in English, because we usually converse as Gaeilge when we're in each other's company. So it was a little bit weird having to switch back to the Berla, and the first 7 or 8 minutes of the episode are indeed in Irish. So you can listen through that and practice your couple of focal, or you can skip ahead 7 or 8 minutes into the conversation once the chat starts. This episode's going to be coming out on Friday the 13th of September, and there's an absolute bucket load of stuff happening in Cork this weekend. The Sounds from Safe Harbour Festival is on, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into some of the great gigs that are happening as part of that festival. So it's not too late, if you're hearing this on the Friday or Saturday, to come along to something. Check out the Sounds from the Safe Harbour Festival and the programme. You'll find it online somewhere or on their social media. We're actually hosting an event as part of this festival ourselves in Ackley. We had our very first storytelling by candlelight event last month in the social space at Ackley, and the crew from the Sounds from the Safe Harbour heard about it and heard that we were running another one at the same time as the festival, and asked us would we like to incorporate our event into the festival programme, and we are after doing that. So we're hosting a storytelling night on Saturday the 14th of September at 8 p.m. in Ackley. You can come along to tell a story, read a wee story, sing a song, bring a musical instrument or something weird along to share with the rest of the group, or you can just come along and have a listen and enjoy the crack. The last one was really good, and it's a free event and it's open to everyone. So if you're in or around Cork City on Saturday night and you're not doing anything else, come along to our wee storytelling night. Also, there wasn't a podcast in the last couple of weeks because I was up at the Electric Picnic 2 weeks ago, and we had an absolute blast, and it took a little bit of a recovery time after that, and then got stuck into the work with Ackley, and also with bringing the Palestine Community Gym project that we have on the go up to the next level. If you want to see the progress on that, you can go to the Palestine Community Gym Instagram page. It's at Palestine Gym on Instagram, and you can see the work that's going on there. The space that we're going to be installing the gym into is currently being renovated. It's getting new electrics, new flooring, new windows, doors, new walls even. Every single penny that we raised so far as part of that fundraising drive, including the 16,000 odd that we raised as part of the gym jam, is all going towards that project, and we're hoping to have the gym in before the end of the year now. So check that out. Also, next week, Kneecap are coming down to Cork. We were up in Electric Picnic with the Kneecap crew, and the gig was absolutely mental. There was about 6,000 people at it. It was in the new Terminus stage in Electric Picnic, and the crowd went absolutely insane. Some bowled boy lit a flare during the gig as well, and the security were not too happy about it. And another thing, this is coming out on Friday the 13th. Kneecap actually have a new track out today. Right today, when this podcast is coming out, go to Spotify. As soon as this podcast episode is finished, go to Spotify, find the Kneecap track and download it. Kneecap are also on Patreon. if you want to support them, as is the Rebel Matters podcast, which this would be a good time to thank the patrons of the podcast so far. So a massive shout out to everyone who's been supporting the Rebel Matters podcast through the Patreon website. If you're a regular listener to RMP and you're enjoying the show and you want to support the project and also help me grow the podcast to the next level and keep on getting great guests, you can support the show through going to the Patreon page and sign up for a monthly subscription of any size, great or small. You can find the link to the Patreon page on the Rebel Matters Instagram bio, and also on the homepage of the Rebel Matters website, which is rebelmatters.ie. And again, massive shout out to everyone who's been supporting the podcast so far. It's a huge help, and it definitely helps to cover the cost of producing the episodes and traveling to see the guests. And also lets me know that you guys are out there and you are listening. If you want to get in touch, of course, you can do that without signing up to the Patreon. Just drop me a message on Instagram, social media, or through the website. And if you have any questions or requests, then send them on. And I'll see what I can do for you. Anyway, as I was saying there, Kneecap are coming down to play a gig in Cypress Avenue on the 21st of September, and I think there's some tickets left for that, so it's not to be missed. If you're in and around Cork, you can follow them on their own social media if you want to find out a little bit more about the tour dates that they have upcoming and all the new tracks, the new lovely tracks that are going to be coming out, including the one that is dropping today on Friday the 13th. So let's get stuck into this episode with Seamus Kennedy. As I was saying, the first 7 or 8 minutes are Asciliga, so you can follow along and pick it up if you want to brush up on your couple of focal, or you can skip ahead if you want to get straight into the meat of the chat, which is in English. As we have been doing in the last few episodes, also, I am going to read you a little bit of a bedtime story, or a daytime story, depending on where you're at the end of the episode. So if you want to stay tuned for that, just let the outro music play out after the chat, and then I will be reading you a couple of chapters from this book right here that I have in my hand, which is Boy Tales of Childhood by Roald Dahl, which is a collection of Roald Dahl's early memories as a boy, and we're nearly halfway through the book together. I actually haven't read this book myself yet, so we're both reading it together at the same time. And a good few people have been in touch with me to say that they're enjoying that part of the podcast, so I'm going to keep it in. And if you want to be a part of that, then just hang on after the outro music. Don't know if you've heard that little beep, but that was the honk of a train passing by the window of the Rebel Matters podcast studio, which is a good sign for me to stop talking and run the lovely chat that I had with the one and only Seamus Kennedy. Dúspara cógáideas as Craven Heron and Boo Moore Craven Heron.
You're all good.
Could you tattoo ish?
Yeah, got crush so crucial is reach no leis na clí club agus le sin ach no vi shocked ní to go going in nig.
So tá sé bheith in club anna fin go?
Yeah, vi le pelagom an donna nig so leis an club yes an irvak. Yeah, vi couple last year going as vi the rash train all leis an club reach I de hina. Agus vi léthe going de or de donna gan sin.
Yes, and what say Jacker Asho like a bheith part and crookie gotí emer to the club couple of animation.
Yeah, no, ní raibh nor even makes no go more leis mar like treis bheith part le Tipperary if like you know né ní no mar sin de vi sé sais rod or ag dollar rash quick na lads leis an club is beag am vi me cabh leis na lads sin ar feig tamlín fada Horace the Sour like Norvi Gawkward Angano so bhí sé go jazz go rash.
Here, so mar bhí me go like písa Yanni Asgillig and then Kojala den podcast Yanni Asperla Gaharithe the Colcaher Tom,
yeah.
It's an Astral.
Yeah, big Tom McSnoola show bhín sé géiste long with this na podcast atá so yeah. Bhí Tom size an homesick fí láir leis na amount léir ach tá sé ag garí go maith Brisbane so
very much shout out Mike Dunn or Thomas ag Lord Shimerla ag an Tomlin but bhí me géirí ceiste chuir carolum tú Gaelic.
Yeah, so Gaelscoil Clúmala darno frasman sin i gcóir an bunscoil fad agus an sin frasmé Gael Cláisication Manscoil i Clúmala so nuair thosaigh mission sin níor bhach 3 bliain don scoil so cé dargus an 3 bliain so níor bhach scór i mo bliain ag an am so dhéan mé an tasta so seach 3 Gael ar fad so sin bhog mé scoil na bráthir dúir Australia i gcóir na máint ach so bhí tús má go I suppose leis an Gaeilge ach nuair frasmé ar Cláisiúr an smáil dhéan mé an Gaeilge arís
okay.
Caribbean so
Limnach
yeah so bhí mé chun múntóirtaí a bhach airig mé sin but yeah so tá an Gaeilge treéis an fart doing sa teach sa bhaile mar tá an Gaeilge me drefuór cumá like
Lawrence of Gaelic sa bhaile?
Well yeah pí le me drefuór pí beag yeah tá Gaeilge an bhaci tá si fi si gobar go Nemetan go Nemetan si Serene ar fai cúpla blina so yeah agus dhéan si Gaeilge sa choláiste cumá.
Mar is fiú ará gur nuair a bhíon muid ag deanú an písa as Berlin seo leis an podcast bé sé ar an céadúir gur luormuid le chéile Emerla beagnach blian
beagnach yeah so yeah agus sin ní raibh misigh buintú sáid mór an as mar go Gaeilge solar host me sa gym láta agus le carbar cumá sa tréáil is seáil Texas gacrod like níl aríonn sibh as Berlin mar curbe agus tá sé rás mar tá mocha Gaeilge like níl sé rás ach tá sé tréis féilsiú pís ar ís like go bhfuil mé buintú sádas so sé go hinntaach. Is
cehannom an lá nuair a tháinig tú isteach ag an gym ag gorcaí agus nuair a bhí me déileir sin Gaeilge le chéile as ag bhí mé ar an text le carbre in the end session here the Gaeilge Shimmy ní luair sé Berlin ní smó agus
yeah bhín the lads suasú tréáil just ag fécant ar like bhfuil trí cín going orange like
so luair tá agus carbre an Gaeilge inis nuair a bhíonn si bhí tréáil
yeah tá sé grás yeah
tá sem bhfuil mór an daoine eile ar an foran bhfuil Gaeilge
yeah tá like na múntóirí go léir so bhíoh Gaeilge maithigh like Niall Maher Brendan Maher tá Carl Barrett I déanamh Gaeilge ansim aige scoil actually Alan Flynn David Sweeney tá ancuid múntóirí tá dermid a téir cúpla leas go
Maggie fosta Brian?
No ní dólam go bhfuil no ní dólam san múntóir manscoil atá siúil Mikey Sunil an Gaeilge mar ceantas na ábhartáige but no ní dólam bhfuil Gaeilge ag Mikey ní mé rócinnta dó Brána mar Mikey mátá.
Go dé mar hosí tú ag deanú an sort of stuff ar an tíine le TG Caharan sin?
Just an céadúir dhéan mé riomhná an clé faoi fé craibhnéireann just chuir siad lécar mar ina seachtaine agus dúirt siad an bhfuil simagus mé seo dhéanamh bhfuil mar dúirt mé bhí mé bhí gobar le Nemetan so déanaan Nemetan sais an production just na the TG Car ar an lé so bhíos ag na lads go raibh Gaeilge gom agus bhí siad ag dangáil le méh agus chuir siad ceistir man mé so sin an céadúir dhéan mé
Clás am tú gáil eisle ar éis síle tú?
Nílas go níl éis éonráid clísin go fód so béidir bhí mé sacht
ar siúil ar bí conspóideach?
No ní dóla mé
an réal flip sin ionach sé so béidir gur seo seans deis maile astrú higan Berla okay bevralam just Lanston array but ar wahead a Tom agus na heisiúí napó Gaeilge acu higléin ahrú Berla agus ma hagan fanart tá seach ag Lord Gaeilge rís just go for it. So ar caiisih rinne am Port Larga?
Tá mission a choní Port Larga fi láthir yeah glean here so is caián nua a air agus bhí mé a choní an gotí gur mé sé gá bliain 10 díis a mar sinnde agus an sin is as glean na hire má bháthair like níl siad ach den am a héad an a chéile like shit agus tá sé sin in Fort Larga So Vogamer an sin nor bheith an í sin bitter day ní mé rock into agus tá mé McConey I Fort Largo.
Right. Go on, Escol, mar nervy meg leo, rin to like Geelan.
Yeah.
I was like, I know, spent up until 10 or 11 living in Newcastle. I was like, what? It's like shin now, grog. Could you ever Hanik Shivaresh? I don't know.
Like,
yeah. Gas. Okay. Let's make the break. Johnny was wrote it and me not her, but Laurie was just burger if I tell
It's weird.
I know, it's weird. It's kind of like when you're watching TV with your mum and dad and like naked people come on. It just feels weird.
Yeah.
This is what's happening here, but
it's a long time since we spoke English together, right?
I know. So I suppose like just to recap on what we were talking about there for anybody who's like hasn't learned Irish yet, just like congratulations on like the last few weeks and like winning the All Ireland and all, and I suppose to put it into context, you've been kind of training bits and pieces of your gym training in Ackley and Cork because you're based here, so that's kind of how we know each other. And it's been class to be even just to be a little part of that whole experience. Seem to have obviously had an unbelievable year. So like in the last 12 months from starting off like with Liam back on board, like, and it'd be class to talk about that, but then also it'd be really interesting just to go back to the beginning and find out like how you ended up playing hurling and stuff and how it all started off.
Yeah, so I suppose like I was saying there, I lived in Newcastle till I was 11 or 12, and Dad would be would have always been a huge Tipperary hurling fan, and my earliest memories are literally poking in the garden with him in Newcastle, and Dad would have been heavily involved with the Newcastle GA club at the time, so he would have been over there teams from like underage all the way up as far as their junior hurling would be their first team, junior A hurling, so as far as them. So my earliest memories of hurling and football I suppose are going to Newcastle matches and following Dad around and going to matches, and then we would never ever have missed a tip match. So, and at the time as well, my aunt Anya, who's from Denier, as I was saying, that's where we moved to now, she was playing ladies football with Waterford. So, and back then Waterford had they still have a very good team. They're kind of coming strong again, but they had a very good team there, and Anya won 5 senior All-Irelands with Waterford, and Mam would have won a junior All-Ireland with Waterford in the first ladies football game that was played in Crow Park in 1986.
Your mum?
Yeah.
No way.
So cracked her ribs the same day in Crow Park, unfortunately for Mam. But I suppose so there's been that interest there always in going to football games to watch Anya, and then Dad bringing me to Newcastle matches and to tip matches. But even I would have been down at every Newcastle training session as well, and just probably been a nuisance to the lads down around there. But there they are, and then just always like an evening we weren't at something, every evening was in the garden at home with Dad, and it was hurling and football always. But would have always preferred hurling, was my first love. Now I love football as well and love playing it still, but hurling was always my first love.
Was there a chance that you would have ended up playing for Waterford? Is that a possibility?
Well, I was 11 or 12 when I moved to Denier, like as I was saying, and the uncles tried their best, I suppose, alright, but I was actually in school in Clonmel in the Gaelscoil, as I said, because with Mam and Dad's work, they were based in town a lot, and we were used to go to Minders while they were working after school and sometimes before school, so I went to the Gaelscoil in Irishtown in Clonmel, and so I would have had a lot of, like, you probably heard Michael Quinlivan and the likes that are playing football with Tip, and we would have had a massive group of St. Mary's and Commercials lads, my clubs, in the Gaelscoil at the time, so I wanted to go up and play with the lads I was in school with, and that's just how I ended up playing in Clonmel. And I suppose there was probably people in Newcastle a bit probably peeved off, understandably too, that I wasn't playing with Newcastle, and then when I moved to Denier, maybe the lads in Denier thought there was a chance I might move, but to be honest, the group of friends I had in the Gaelscoil, we're still actually so close. Primary school, we're still very close, and there was never a chance. I was already too far deep, and I think if I was playing in Waterford, I could have been put up for adoption maybe, but
that would have been harsh enough punishment. So what was it like then when you started up playing the club and stuff? Like at what stage did you was there something in your early days that said I'm going to play for Tipperary, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I suppose it was always a dream, like any young lad in Tip, to play hurling for Tip is a dream. Like, there's such, like, you've probably seen it from speaking to Carver, like the tradition and what it means to people in Tip. Like, hurling is just, it's a way of life, I suppose, really, as well as a game of hurling. And but I suppose the big decision for me came, I suppose, in third year. I was in Gaelflosh Caton, the Irish secondary school, small school, as I was saying. When I first started, it was only first, second and third year. Like, we hadn't even gotten to leaving cert. And the principal of the school, Charlie McGeever, is actually an unbelievable Irish speaker from Donegal. He was the principal, and he's the manager of commercials. Like, so I suppose it has been really, really good to me. But I had a big decision to make then. I suppose there wasn't, in Clonmel is a predominantly football area. But as I said, hurling was always my first love. So I kind of had a decision to make, like, right, am I going to give this a real crack now, like, which I did want to. So St. Kieran's had always been an option, because a lot of people from around South Tip actually go to St. Kieran's and Kilkenny, and Donica Fahy, who is from St. Mary's, won in All Ireland with Tip in 2001, would have went to St. Kieran's, and Owen Kelly obviously went to St. Kieran's as well. But at the time, Turles were coming really strong and had actually won the All Ireland colleges around that time, and the Harty Cup. And the bus was going from Clonmel every morning at 7:30. So I decided for a transition. I said, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, to be honest with you. And stayed there for TY 5th and 6th year, did my leaving cert in Turles. And my hurling improved so much from playing in the likes of the Harty Cup and those competitions, Dean Ryan's, Fitzgerald Cups, and just, I suppose, playing with lads that hurling was like myself. I suppose they all wanted to make it at hurling as well. And you're playing with lads from clubs like Turles, Sarsfields, Holy Cross, Lockmore, Castleiney, the big clubs in Tip hurling.
It's mad how big of an impact teachers can have, even in the early days, like on your like your future like sporting career or whatever you end up doing. I remember the principal of our school, the primary school at the time, Jim Rotuma, sent us all up to St. Paul's, and he was still is like a mad hurling man, and has like really strong connections with Cork as well. But he was sending us all up to St. Paul's, which is the club we ended up playing for, and really kind of instills like a love for hurling from a very early age. And just hear it so often, like a lot of that kind of nurturing comes from school. I was wondering, how come you ended up going to such a small kind of Gael school? Is there something in the family that made your parents send you to such a small school?
Well, the Gael school in the primary school would have been kind of fairly well established at the time. And so I actually don't really know what their decision was, now that you say it, why we went to the Gael school, the primary school. But absolutely delighted we did go there, because as I said, like, the group of friends, we have a WhatsApp group called Gael School, from the primary school, like, of not just my class, from kind of the 3 or 4 year classes below me and 3 or 4 maybe above me. Like, we got a really, really good group at the time, and we're very successful in sport in the school at the time as well. But the secondary school, I suppose, as I said, Charlie McGeever was the principal of the school, and Charlie was really, really good to me in my development in GA as a young lad. Like, he would have been overall. Charlie's son, Carl, being one of my best friends. They moved to Donegal when I was in third class, and Carl was in the same class as me, so we'd be very close. And remember, we did the open day there, and I remember we knew there was going to be small classes, but just kind of the interaction we had with the teachers it was nearly like a grind school. Like, there was 20 in my year, as I was saying. Like, I was able to do whatever subject I wanted. Like, and going into high school, maybe would have got my subjects, I don't know, but in a big school, like, you're not sure, like, you just don't know what subjects you're going to get or how you'll get on. But I felt in the Gaelflosh Caton that I was really going to get on a lot better, and I was going with a couple of friends as well, and Cahill in particular, and I was delighted I did. It's a brilliant school and has gone from strength to strength since. And even on my placement from Mary I went back and taught there, like, and it was really good, like, and I love calling back in there. Class.
We had a similar experience in Belfast, myself and Carver and Nisha, in that we went to Manscoil Farstad, which is now College de Farstad, and it was a small school at the time. Whenever me and Carver went there, it was quite a bit bigger whenever Nisha went there. But at the time when me and Carver were there was no hurling team, and we were like obsessed with hurling. But we were obviously had to go to the Manscoil because it was the Irish speaking secondary school, and it was not that we wanted to go as well. We were very proud to be going to that school, and we kind of like were on the struggle when we were in the school, trying to get recognition for the school and everything. But when it came to our A-level years, which is like the equivalent of the leaving cert, all three of us actually moved to St. Mary's, which is an English speaking school up the road. But one of the main reasons was because of to go and play hurling. We kind of felt like I definitely felt kind of guilty when I was going to do it, but I had the subjects I wanted to do were in St Mary's at the time, and I really, really, really wanted to play like the school hurling in Ulster, and it was probably a big decision for all of us.
Same as myself. Yeah, it was a big decision. Like, and the teachers were so good to me in the Gael Flash at the time, and I had some really good friends there as well. But it goes back to, I suppose, what I wanted kind of, a couple of years down the line, and unfortunately there was no Harty Cup hurling in the high school at the time, and St Mary's would have been reasonably successful, I suppose, underage, kind of not like wouldn't have been competing with the bigger clubs like when we got out of the South Division. And so I suppose I had a decision to make, right? Do I really want to give this hurling a proper crack? And I felt going to the likes of a St Kieran's or a Hurler CBS was important for me to improve, and it was.
Would you have had a big rivalry with St Kieran's at the time?
Turles and Kieran's probably would have been if they played each other. Now, they haven't come across each other a huge amount even since. I think they played in one All-Ireland Colleges final. Like the year before I went to Turles was the first All-Ireland Colleges title Turles ever won. Like, so when you think about it, for the size of, big school and the clubs they're pulling from, it's hard to believe that they've only won one All-Ireland Colleges. Like, so actually probably Turles and Kieran's, I'm not sure exactly, but I'd say they wouldn't have crossed paths with each other a huge amount. At the time, the big rivalry was Turles CBS and De La Salle in Waterford. Derek McGrath was over the De La Salle team, and they bet Turles in two All-Ireland Colleges final in the years previous to Turles won it.
Like, when you're looking back at your teenage years now, playing hurling, what are your abiding memories of it?
I suppose one of the best memories, was going my first year in Turles in transition. We won the Dean Ryan and the final happened to be on in Clonmel in my home field, and that was really, really nice. I suppose I kind of felt like kind of my decision now is I don't know if justified is the right word, but I felt like this is going well now.
What's the Dean Ryan?
Dean Ryan is the under 16 and a half competition for schools in Munster. So Turles hadn't won it, I think, in 19 years, and we won it in Clonmel in my home field as well, like in the same area as Commercials field, like, so that was special, I suppose. Would have been a good one. Other than that, I suppose just even playing with St Mary's, we won a few South titles with St Mary's, and we won a South Minor A title with St Mary's as well, and would have been, we had a really good group at that time as well, between the hurling and the football. So yeah, I had a lot of great days with St Mary's as well underage.
Was there any times when you were, developing as a young player where you questioned whether like all the commitment was worth it?
Yeah, sometimes. Not even really. Like, as I said, we got some great days between hurling and football at that time. Got some unbelievable days. So the sacrifices always felt like they were worth it. I suppose I was lucky enough to play on the minor football team in 2011. We won the Munster and All Ireland that year, like, with Tip, like, so that was at 18 years of age. To be getting that experience, like, was just like, oh my God, like, I'm still in school. This is crazy. Like, thinking back on it now, like, you're actually only a kid, like, you think you're growing up at the time, like, but you're really not. Like,
you're way more kind of carefree back then.
You are, like, and even you're so young and you're having to crack so much, you're actually not even taking time to really enjoy it and take it all in, I suppose. But yeah, things like that, I suppose, always kind of felt like you were obviously sacrificing things, like, but that it was worth it.
Yeah, back then, like, when you think about the cliche of being out pucking around, like, until the sun's going down, like, that's actually true when you're that age. Like, yeah, it actually is what goes on. Like, you're just out there until someone pulls you back into the house, or it's too dark to see the ball.
Can't see the ball anymore.
Yeah. Or someone gets cut.
Or you broke a window at home. So yeah. I broke one a couple of years ago, Mum, and she wasn't too impressed. She was like, "You're surely too old to be breaking windows still at this stage." But I don't think I'll ever be too old.
Yeah. How did you manage to play hurling and football the whole way through? Like, it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, I suppose, as I said, Clonmel, like, in the surrounding area, Clonmel is traditionally a football area of Tipperary. South Tip would be known as football area, and Clonmel Commercials, is the football club I play for, traditionally would be a very successful club in Tipperary. So, like, we'd had huge success underage with Commercials. So I don't know about managing it. It was just always done. It was just all I knew, really, like, that it was kind of hurling and football, played both as much as each other, and loved both of them. But I suppose coming to about 18, that kind of thing, I'd always, like, when commitment starting to get a bit more, all right, like, I was my decision would have always, like, if there was a choice to be made, hurling always would have got the nod. Like,
yeah, and you started off then in your kind of university career was in Mary I. Did you play Fitzgibbon hurling for?
Yeah, we won a Fitzgibbon with Mary I. So the first Fitzgibbon that Mary I won. I know I only had a small part to play in it, to be fair. We actually got a run with commercials that year. We got to an All-Ireland club semi-final. Ballyboden bet us in, I think, the middle of February, so the Fitz was kind of in full swing at that stage, so I kind of got back for the quarter-final stage and was coming on in the games and that kind of thing. But
what year was that?
That was 2016. So February 2016, we'd got bet with commercials, and I would, missed a lot of the group. I missed all the group games at Mary I, and went back in then. So Eamon Cregan would have been the manager, and Gavin O'Mahony was involved, Shane Nolan, and Jamie Wall. Jamie from the gym there as well.
So cousins with Jamie, right?
Yeah. Self and Jamie are cousins. Yeah, we are. Our great grandfathers were brothers. Yeah, and fought in the War of Independence and Third Tipperary Brigade. So yeah. So he actually sent me the picture a couple of weeks ago. It's class. So he just had it like 2 arrows pointing down. It was Jamie and Sham at our great grandfather. So yeah, it's cool bit of history. All right, yeah.
And what do you know about that period of time whenever they were taking part in the War of Independence?
Very little, actually, to be honest with you. And it's something that I should know more about and kind of plan to get to know more about now. Right, obviously, I just knew that they fought on the Republican side in the Civil War, or War of Independence. So, so that's pretty much as I know now. Their brother Paddy fought in it with them as well. So yeah.
So are they fighting on the pro-treaty side or the anti-treaty side?
Anti-treaty.
On the anti-treaty side?
Yeah. Anti-treaty. Yeah, anti-treaty, yeah.
And it's
I
such
hope
a strong...
I have that right now.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, there is a big difference.
There's a very strong connection with Tipperary in the War of Independence, isn't there, in general?
Yeah, there would. Obviously the song, the Galtee Mountain Boy and Dan Breen and all the lads. Yeah, it's massive. And, it probably, even the County Senior Trophy in Tip is the Dan Breen Cup, so there's massive connections there, yeah.
Even it was the day of the All-Ireland, you sent me the videos of the commemoration.
Yeah, the Sean Tracy commemoration. It's tradition, I didn't know, but they say Mass the morning of the All-Ireland there.
On Talbot Street or something?
Talbot Street, yeah. When Tipper are involved in the All-Ireland, they say Mass there. Looked unbelievable, and a few of the lads from the club went, and they just said, there's shivers down your back. They're it was unreal. They were ready to play after going to it. But yeah, it's cool. There's some big traditions, and obviously we've with Tip, Bloody Sunday as well. Michael Hogan was shot. So yeah, I was saying to you, my jersey from the 2016 final is going into the museum in Clonmel beside his jersey from Bloody Sunday. So I can't wait to see that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's class. It's kind of something that often I think people kind of shy away from, the connection between maybe the GAA and the War of Independence and even the Civil War as well. That can be an easy thing to kind of brush under the carpet. And a lot of the time people say that it's important to keep sport and politics separate from each other. But then there's times when you, with Michael Hogan was playing for Tipperary when he got shot dead. It's by the British Army, it's impossible to separate.
Yeah, and I think it is. Well, for me, it is impossible to separate anyway. And I don't think it's lost on a lot of lads at times what you are representing for Tipperary. Like as you said, Michael Hogan travelled to Crow Park in back then 1920 to go play for Tipperary. I did 99 years later. Lucky enough to and we were both going up there to represent Tipperary and try and win. And when you say it like that, it's quite mad. Really, it's a bit surreal to think that. But it is, and that's what you're representing. And the tradition that we spoke about, that's the tradition, I suppose, that Tipperary GAA has within the GAA.
It's probably something that rings true around the country, and that the GAA is hurling and football. It's more than just a sport, and it's kind of an inherent part of our culture that's connected with. It is connected with the history of the country and the struggle against the British occupation and the Irish language and the other elements of the culture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being in Belfast January 2017.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and I just couldn't. I suppose maybe it's just ignorance on our behalf. The passion that the lads in Belfast had for hurling was ferocious. It was unbelievable, and was like in Tip, like it's like for us, like I suppose we've been successful, like Tipperary over the years. It's about, you know, winning All Irelands. But I felt from chatting to a few of the lads in Belfast that it was much bigger than that. Like it's more representation of culture and identity, and, you know, keeping that alive. I could be wrong, but
I think you're right. Like, and actually, you were in Casement Park, and you know there's a massive controversy over Casement Park, which is still going on. That there is no stadium. Antrim J haven't got a stadium at the minute. And we actually grew up just up the road from Casement Park, and I remember that time you were up, and even though Casement is still in a state of like absolute abandon, but there's a big banner that's still up there down the back of the stand that says like no false Tipperary hurlers.
Oh yeah,
and it's still there, like, because the social club is still in operation in Casement Park, so it would be in there the odd time. And if you go down the back, the banner's still there. And it really was a special moment for people that you went that time. It really, really was, because you're right in that, especially around, like in West Belfast, you know, from our house, you're within striking distance of about 7 clubs from our house. Like St Paul's, Ross, Sarsfields are right beside each other. St Teresa's, St John's, Lavyarg, St Gall's, like they're all relatively close to each other. Yeah. It's, you know, it's a densely populated area. It's an area that has some major social problems and social, like, deprivation and poverty. And I think the GAA plays a role. The GAA clubs in the area play a massive role in, you know, helping, giving young people something to aspire to, and giving, you know, somewhere to go. You know, somewhere that's a place that people can kind of like express themselves, be creative, and get involved, and get positive role models and stuff like that. I think that's one of the saddest things about Casement Park, that it's after going to such a state, is that whenever I was like, from as far back as I can remember, I remember going to watch Antrim playing in Casement Park, like in the early 90s. It would have been the same team that played against Tipperary in 1989.
Yeah.
And even though, look, the result was not great for Antrim that day, but it was an absolute gent of a man from our own club, and a great hurling man, Jim Nelson, was in charge of that team in 89, and he was like God to us when we were kids. Like, he lived just across the road from my granny's house and played, like, was a St Paul's man, and we were going to Casement Park, and we were aspiring to be like these giants on the field from a very young age. And then every day I'd be going past it, going to school every day, and I'd look in. There was a gap in the fence at a certain point that was lined up with the middle of the pitch, if you know what I mean. So it was like behind the goalposts. So you were driving down the road, and if you looked at the right point at the right time, you could see the whole way down from one goalpost to the far goalpost. You always make sure to look in just to see if there was a match on. Yeah. If there was a match on, and you'd really fast try and look to see what the score was. And if there was no match on, it was like a little pilgrimage. You're just going past, and you're just like paying homage to the hurling gods. And the pitch was like a flipping snooker table. And even when we were kids, there was Joe Rogan was making hurleys in the stadium. Right. You got to go down there and into his workshop, you smell of sawdust, and you see Joe Rogan was on the squad that played against Tep in 89 as well. You see him making hurleys, like his hands like shuffles, and you know, like everything that goes along with that whole thing of just someone in there like carving out these hurleys out of ash. And then, you know, like that really drove us on to want to play for Antrim, in which I ended up playing for Antrim. I actually played against Tipperary in Casement in 2004 in the league. But
who were you playing?
I was marking. Who was I marking that day? I was marking Paddy O'Brien that day. So
did you meet him this year at all? Did you get to meet him? No.
But and John Devan was playing for that team as well.
Very good.
I was playing with John Devan with him for UL at the time, and so all those things kind of kept us going and gave us a great sense of like motivation to, you know, better ourselves. And that's like not there anymore. It's not to say that GA is still there.
That focal point,
exactly, like the holy ground. But you're right to say that it is like it is a massive sort of gives people a massive sense of identity and a great connection to the culture. And I think that because of the fact that there was so many efforts made to take that culture away from people, people that, you know, like we really wanted to hold on to it. But and then on a more practical level, it just gives young people something productive to do. But I think that like, you know, I think that the impact of when you guys went up that time was that there definitely is a sense of being abandoned in Antrim, like it's a hurling county that's separated from all the rest
yeah,
of the
the
hurling
rest of the
counties in a
hurling
way,
counties,
like gone through all the years of conflict and stuff like that really made things very, very difficult. Like to develop any kind of like
anything.
When Down won the All Ireland in football was like the first time. It was the first time in a long time that any Ulster team had won. I think the All Ireland or any of the 6 counties anyway. I don't know.
What year did Down win the All Ireland again?
It was in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, because I remember. I think was it Mickey Hart's like Gael, and he mentioned that point as well, and he mentioned how like the Ulster teams during the time of the Troubles they didn't win in All Ireland. Like and them competing at a national level was seriously affected, but like naturally enough, and that like no Ulster team won an All Ireland football title during those years, like which it just hits home then, like that how big it was.
It was a dangerous thing to travel as well, especially if you read there's Sambo McNaughton's autobiography.
Yeah, Sambo, yeah.
I can't remember what it's called now, but I read it years ago, and he describes times whenever they're driving the training and the British Army pull them over and break all their hurleys and like throw their gear into the ditch and stuff like that there. And at that really like is the least of your worries if you're getting stopped by the UDR, because they would at the time been able to take all your details and stuff. And I actually remember as a kid, that was the first time I realised there was anything that was kind of fucked up going on around the place. Was I heard my mum talking to my granny about the UDR checkpoints, which was a regiment of the British Army that was like locally recruited, so they had very strong connections with like the loyalist paramilitaries, and they could set up checkpoint anywhere and take details, and they did, and like took people's details and passed them on to loyalists, and then people ended up getting killed as a result of it.
The Crossmaglen set up as well, wasn't it? That was the army base right beside the GA field as well, wasn't it? In Crossmaglen,
that's true. And the council ground that we ended up hurling on for many years, just still there. It's actually under threat at the minute. Glasswallen Green used to be a big barracks. It's just around the corner from our house. So that's where we spent our like those long days, talking around until someone came and brought you in, or someone got
till you got hungry.
But the British Army helicopters used to land on that field whenever we were poking around, like those big Chinook helicopters with the 2 propellers. Like one of those landed when we were poking around one time, and like 25 soldiers jumped out of the back of it and started a patrol. I actually remember hitting one on the head with a slitter. Pinged him. he was wearing a helmet, so it was okay. But he fucked the slitter away and never seen it again. But
good story, though.
Yeah, and ironically, that ground used to be the biggest barracks in the whole of the north. It used to be called Silver City, and it was a big overshadowing building. It was gone by the time we moved up there, but there's pictures of it that the walls were huge and it was blocking the light of the daylight and into the houses around it. And it's kind of ironic in a positive way that we were able to reclaim that land and puck around on it, but it's actually under threat now. One of the local schools is trying to take over it and close it in, use it as a AstroTurf pitches, so there's a big kind of dispute going on there at the minute. But I guess to finish the point that I started about 2 hours ago there is the sense of abandonment that sometimes was there. And I think that even this could be really unfair on the teams that we played against, but a lot of the teams that we played against whenever I was playing for Antrim used to drive as far north as they could and stop before the border and stay there in the hotel, and then to stay in the hotel in the south, drive up to Belfast and play the match, and then drive back to the hotel in the south again. I was kind of like, I always used to remember, as like even when we were playing, like say minor for Antrim or under 21 and senior as well, you were like, why? Like, what's the crack? Like, why don't they come up and stay in Belfast or somewhere?
That's mad. I didn't realise that. No,
yeah. And as I say, I could be like paranoid or like about kind of overthinking that, but I think that that fact that you guys took the time to go up and spend time with people there and kind of went around the clubs, a couple of clubs, I think, and stuff when you were up there.
Yeah, we were only there, I think, for 2 days. Like, it was very rushed. We didn't got to see a few small bits, but just the welcome we got from the clubs and the people up there was just unbelievable and so refreshing. Like, I suppose maybe we don't realise, but like I suppose that at the time we were All Ireland champions, going up to Antrim was a big deal. Like, but just the welcome we got was unbelievable. And we were in the Cultural, and I remember we spoke to you about that before. Yeah, we were in the Cultural that night as well, and on the Falls Road, like, and you know, it was cool.
Yeah, the Cultalan is actually the building that we went to school in originally. And I suppose there is a strong connection there with Antrim and Tipperary, like being the last time that we were on the All Ireland was against Tip, and also then Denny Cahill was managing Antrim for a good few years.
Darren Gleeson's manager now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I remember actually Antrim rattled Tipperary there in the quarterfinal some years ago, didn't it? Like when the first year Denny was in with them, they ran Tipperary quite close. It must have been about 2002 or something like that.
Could have been. No, I'm not sure.
And
I'm trying to think.
They brought them within a couple of points, but anyway. So, what brought you as far as playing senior for Tipperary? Like, what was the journey there?
Yeah, journey there. It wasn't a simple one. Got called in 2013, kind of during the summer. We got into the Munster under 21 final, and Eamon O'Shea called me in to just do a bit of just kind of extended panel training, for the matches inside and training and things like that. Like, and was part of things and went to the matches. And actually, I remember that was the summer Tip played Kilkenny down in Nolan Park. And I remember I was on the extended panel, but we still talked into the warm up. And I'll never forget the atmosphere in Nolan Park. I don't know if you remember, it was 2013. It was knockout. It was a qualifier game, and Nolan Park was packed to the rafters. And the atmosphere in there that day was unbelievable. So again, they got called in fully then in the winter before the 2014 season, and got dropped after the league, and was so disappointed. But looking back on it, probably give myself a proper chance. Was playing club under 21 football and under 21 football for Tip, and that under 21 football team with Tip would have been the team that won the minor All Ireland. So we were very keen to try and back that up, and picked up a few niggly injuries with all the heavy training and matches. Then kind of had just an ongoing kind of niggly hamstring, and kept me out for a couple of weeks. I'll be back another couple of weeks, and just very frustrating. And like it probably wasn't up to it at the time. Looking back, genuinely wasn't up to it, and so got dropped after the league in 2014. And then didn't get called back in 2015. Again, was very disappointed. But Peter Creedon called me into the Tip senior football panel, and played a year with the Tip footballers, and really, really enjoyed it. Had a brilliant year, and Peter was absolutely top class to me. And I'll never forget it when he rang me, and he just said, "Look," he said, "come in here for the year." He said, "It'll bring you on lows." He said, "You'll really enjoy it." And look, he said, like, you never know, you might get called back into the hurling again. It stuck with me, because I suppose he was manager to the football team, and he was still big enough to kind of say, like, you could still get to play hurling. Like, he wasn't totally selfish in that he just wanted lads just for football. And I appreciate that he had that kind of few words with me, like, and he needn't have bothered. And I thought that was very good of him. And then I suppose as I said, we got in that club run with commercials in the winter 2015 at one of Munster clubs. So, it goes into the following year. So we weren't playing an All Ireland club semi-final until middle of February. And I presumed, not that I presumed anything, but I genuinely didn't think I was going to get called back into the hurling panel. I just thought, like, look, maybe the ship has sailed, like, and because we'd won the Munster club with commercials, so I knew I was going to be tied up with commercials to the middle of February. But Mick Ryan actually called me and said he wants me to come back in to the hurling panel, so I was absolutely delighted. So, and used to train every Saturday morning with the hurlers. It was non-contact, all hurling. That's the kind of session they were doing on a Saturday morning, so it was great. So I was doing my fitness training with commercials and all the hard training with them, and on a Saturday morning then I would go up and do an hour session, but all ball. It was just really, really enjoyable. Those hurling sessions go in, and it's just all snappy, short stuff, absolutely just lovely. With Declan Fanning, he was unreal at those sessions. So had a great year then. Kind of didn't play any game in the league, and I suppose I was flying fit from the club and just hit a patch of form and got into the team for the first round, the Cork game, and just went on and we had a great year that year. Ended up winning the All Ireland, and I suppose that's how it ended up. It was just mad, really. Kind of like if you told me in November 2015 that you'd even be called into the Tip hurling panel, I'd have been thrilled. And then 12 months later, you played an All Ireland final and won. It was just a bit surreal, to be honest.
Like, whatever about being out, pucking around with your mates until the sun goes down when you're a teenager, but having given that commitment to become top flight senior player, and then like getting dropped like how that must be a big hit to like your confidence or your sense of like identity or something like that. Was it how was it? How did you get back from that?
Yeah, it was hard. It was very hard, and thankfully, there was some really good people around me. Mum and Dad have been unbelievable to me from day one. Like, and I suppose the last couple of weeks, you see all the people slapping me on the back, saying well done and all this, and I've been lucky enough to have some brilliant highs, I suppose, in my hurling football career. But there's been some pretty bad lows as well. Sporting wise now, thankfully, like in real life, I suppose there hasn't been too many bad lows around like that, thank God. But in sport, and I just think you have good days and bad days in sport, and people like Mum and Dad, and I think the likes of Billy Carroll involved with St. Mary's, and Martin Quinlivan Bloss in commercials, and a few other people at the club, and a few other friends. Just Billy Carroll saying to me always was, he says, stay knocking on that door and eventually it will open for you. And it's something he's always said to me, and he's brilliant. Like, Billy Carroll's a legend in St. Mary's, and if I go anywhere and tip to any club or anything, and people in those clubs ask me, how's Billy Carroll? And I suppose just those kind of advice and having good people around you. And I suppose I never gave up on it either too. I stayed working away and hoped that someday it might turn for me, and thankfully it did.
Are there times whenever taking the hit, when you have to take a step back from a panel because you're not getting called up or something like that, where that hit can like affect your mental health, like in the real life?
Yeah, well, thankfully, I suppose I've learned to kind of separate that I'm not, my whole life isn't just hurling with Tip, or it's not just hurling and football with St. Mary's and commercials, that I'd hate to be just seen as a Tipperary hurler, that kind of way. I'd like to be able to separate Seamus to just Seamus that works in Cork and has a crack with the lads living in the house there, and whatever else. But yeah, and thankfully I don't suffer from those bad lows. Touch wood, I don't. But I'm sure there is people that do suffer from it. And that's only, I suppose, the pressures now that come with it, and the pressures of winning, and the pressures of, I think society today is all about win and succeed. It's maybe it can be hard for lads to kind of cope with not getting something like that. But I think there's very few people I think that go through an inter-county career smooth sailing. I think if you chat 95% of, maybe 99% of inter-county players, they've had some probably very bad knocks or some serious lows, between injuries, dropping off panels, different things like that, loss of form, so I think just taking the rough with the smooth is very important.
Where did you get that mentality from, of being able to separate yourself and acknowledging that you're more than just a hurler or a footballer?
I think that's just maybe over the last couple of years, maybe. I suppose in 2016, as I said, it happened very quick, and all of a sudden you'd won an All-Ireland with Tip, and there was all, everyone patting you on the back and that kind of thing, and geez, that's Seamus Kennedy there. Maybe you might hear the street in Clonmel or some pub in Clonmel at Christmas time or something like that. And not that it, don't get me wrong, we put ourselves up there. We put ourselves out there to play for Tip and things like that, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's a privilege, but I don't know really. I'd hate to be defined as just a hurler, or a footballer. And I suppose thankfully I have a good group of friends here in Cork that I'm living with, and in Clonmel, and the lads I was in college with as well, that I could meet them, and if we were together for 2 days in a row, we might never speak about hurling or football.
I think it's such a valuable trait to have, because I would imagine that there, especially probably for the younger players out there, that you can grow up in a place that hurling or football or another sport is like the main thing in the community, and someone becomes very good at it and gets a lot of credit for it from a very young age up until they're like a young adult or whatever. But then it ends up in a position where a lot of their identity is tied up in being just a sports player. But that's a very fickle kind of an identity to have, and that it can take a hit anytime. You could break your leg, or as you say, you could start playing bad, or something like that can happen. And I think it's a really valuable probably thing for other people to hear, that we know we're everyone is more than just a sports player.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even, you know, the lads on the panel, like, they're such good lads, like, and, you know, you'd often hear, like, in Tip, there's always been rumours. There's always, if Tip aren't playing well, there's rumours, you know, and you're kind of just going, oh my God, here we go again. Like, who's involved this time, or what have we done now? Like, and it's kind of become nearly like, you know, you just start laughing about it now. Like, but the thing, I suppose, that can affect some people, like we said there before, like, or like, I was involved in the rumours in 2017, you know, that there was a few with drinking the week before the Cork match, and like, I didn't care, like, you know, I didn't. But there was other rumours as well that, like, were, you know, a lot more serious than that, and you're just kind of going, you know, there's actually people's parents reading this, or there's actually friends or girlfriends or that are actually being affected by this, you know. And I suppose it goes back to, like, I think you were saying there, the younger people, like, social media now, like, it's so easy for anybody to put an opinion up there, and
It could just take off.
Yeah, it could just take off. And yeah, so I don't know, really.
People do, like, gossiping is a really good pastime for a lot of people as well. And that, like, I was actually on the train from Limerick Junction to back to Cork a few weeks ago. It was I'd say 3 days before the All Ireland final or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was two lads sitting behind me, and they were steaming, and they were actually recorded a little bit of the conversation and sent it to Carbra, because they were cutting the back out of all of you.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
But, like, there was obviously no badness in it. They were just
and it's water off a duck's back, I think, now at this stage for a lot of people. But, like, as you said, if you're young coming into the panel, like, that might take a bit of getting used to, you know, and that kind of thing. Like, but, you know, it's part and parcel of it now.
What's it like? What was the setup like this year? It must have been something special, seeing as you went the whole way.
Yeah, it was top class. It really was. You know, obviously, as a young lad in 2008, 9, 10, watching the Tip teams that Liam was involved in, like, you know, I remember being in Croke Park in 2007 and Tip lost to Wexford, and it was such, like, I couldn't believe it, like, you know, like, where are Tip going? And then Liam came in and totally lifted the whole county, like, you know, and by the time he'd finished in 10, we'd won an All Ireland and stopped Kilkenny, you know, for the famous drive for 5. And, like, I think as soon as Liam was announced, there was just huge buzz and excitement around the county, like, and I just think, like, Liam has been absolutely top class, and, you know, the guys he's got involved around him have been unbelievable as well, like, and Carver has done an unbelievable job, you know, with us this year, and he's done so much work, you know, between the fitness on the field and the gyms, and, like, even you were saying you played a small part, but it's actually quite a big part. Like, you played, like, we were able to use your gym here on a Monday and Wednesday evening, like, or you were able to let us come in and stretch when we needed to, or if there was anything extra we needed, like, you know, it was there for us, like, and we had an actual base to go to, like, and, you know, the great coaches in Ockley, like, you know, if there was a question, you know, am I doing this right, am I doing this wrong, you know, we were able to, you know, be directed, like, you know, so it's been an absolute, you know, it was such an enjoyable year, like, it really was.
The energy seems to be bursting out of Liam. Like, you see him on the sideline, like, he looks like he's going out flipping good stuff into someone sometimes.
Yeah, I want to put a GPS on it, maybe see what.
And so, what then? At what stage during the year did you think, like, shit, this could go somewhere? Like, was there a particular turning point, or was it even, like, I was even thinking, like, it seemed to be, looking from the outside, that after the Limerick match must have been a turning point for you, because that was kind of a low point.
Yeah, so the Limerick point was a low point. I think the big thing about the Limerick game was we were just so disappointed with ourselves and how we played on the day, like, and, you know, I think we were anxious to put that right. We just didn't do ourselves justice on the day, or didn't do the setup, or, like, what has been put into us all year. Like, we didn't do that justice on the Munster final. I think, you know, that pissed us off a bit, to be honest with you. And I suppose all the big questions were coming up again about Tip, like, you know, that we just spoke about there, like, but we didn't really let any of that affect us, to be fair. And, you know, we got turning point. I suppose the obvious one is the last 20 minutes or the second half against Wexford. You know, when you were down to 14 men and all sorts of questions were asked, and, you know, we answered them, and, like, that was so sweet that day. But to be honest, like, as you said there, as soon as we started training back, there was just an unbelievable buzz and an energy about the thing, and always felt that something was going to happen with the group, you know. And but I suppose if you had to pick one, probably was the Wexford game. But from day one, there was just an unbelievable energy and buzz around the place.
What's it like when you're in the All-Ireland final and you're getting ready for it, like, and the whole build up to that? And as a side question to that, when I was reading through your diary that you had in the paper in the run up to the All-Ireland, you were talking about going to the well side where
Paddy's Well, yeah.
Maybe you could like talk a little bit about that as well, but also the kind of the whole build up, because it must be. I mean, is there any way to have a build up to an All-Ireland final when you're so involved in it without feeling a measure of pressure, or how does the whole thing go?
Yeah, like people I think or I suppose people always like, geez, how did you prepare for that, or how do you get rid? But like we spoke about those as a kid in a garden or on a field, and like you're dreaming of playing for Tip, and all of a sudden you're getting ready for an All-Ireland final and you're actually living your dream. Like, there's not many people get to live their dream. Like, so we're so lucky and so privileged that I remember Noel McGrath saying it to me after the All-Ireland semi-final in 2016. He said, you know what, people are on about doing a build up for the All-Ireland final in 3 weeks. And he just said to me, he said, enjoy this. He said, like this, he said, this is what it's all about. Like, and yeah, there's nerves and there's bits of pressure and that, like, but like if you can't enjoy the build up to an All-Ireland final, like, you know, or like you're in the wrong game, like, for me anyway, like, and you know, I enjoyed it. And I suppose in that diary I mentioned, I spent most of the week in Cork. That's great. Like, the helmets are the best thing ever. I can walk over to Mahon for a cup of coffee. I can, you know, go into town for a stroll around and no one has an idea who I am. And I love that. Absolutely love that. Like, so, you know, that's probably how I, you know, prepared, really just stuck at the same thing. I think I was in with you on the Wednesday and, you know, got my few bits that I needed sorted, and, you know, surrounded myself with the people that I normally surround myself with coming up to a match. And yeah, Paddy's Well is it's a great place, really. Since I was, I don't know, I'd say 12, maybe a bit older, any aches or pains, if we ever had it, that's where we were brought. Probably Bloss and Michael Quinlivan, initially Bloss would have always brought the two of us down there and to sit in the well, and he'd be timing us and do whatever, 7, 8, 10 minutes, and just always gone there, and he just to freshen up the legs and that kind of thing. And but it's actually, I don't know if you've been in Paddy's Well, probably not. I'll have to show you sometime. But it's actually an unbelievable, like, it's kept so well. There's a proper committee there to keep it, and it's just, I love going down there sometimes just to, you know, think and, you know, that kind of thing, and get away from the world and that kind of way. And
that's exactly what I was thinking when I was reading your description of it. It seemed like it was after becoming kind of a meditative practice or something, going down there and just like,
yeah, without even meaning to be like, it's like I'm not someone that, you know, does meditate really or anything like that, but I think Paddy's Well has probably just become a place for me that I can go down, and if I've had a good game, if I've had a bad game, or I don't know, a shit week in college or a shit week in work or whatever it is, just go down, kind of, even if I don't get in, I'll have a stroll around or whatever, or go down with a couple of the lads and have a bit of crack. And I suppose it's become that, I suppose. And I love going down there still, and yeah, use it quite a bit.
What about the day of then, the game? What's the rundown of, like, how did that whole thing go for you?
Day of the game, yeah, day of the game. To be honest, waking up on the day of the game, it's like, God, finally it's here, you know, that kind of way. Because at time, like you're saying, the build up doesn't affect you, but obviously there is times and it drags, and you're like, you know, you kind of have to remind yourself, like, this is actually another game here. There's actually, you know, the ref's going to throw the ball in here at 3:30, like, and you have to play a game of hurling, you know. So yeah, I actually, once I wake up the morning of the game, I'm kind of like, there is nerves, absolutely. If I wasn't nervous, I'd be more worried, to be honest. But like, you're going to meet the lads then, and kind of once you're all together, I think it's great. Then we kind of all relax a small bit then, because, you know, the preparation is done, really. Like, it's just about letting it out at that stage. So I actually, waking up the morning of the game, any game, the championship games with Tip, it's always great, because, you know, you're going off now to get to play. And
I think when people are looking at the All-Ireland final or any game, you know, I guess they're looking at 15 people who are wearing the same jersey against 15 people who are wearing a different jersey, and that's cool, like, it's one team versus the other team. But then the other thing that's going on is, like, there's 15 individuals on the pitch. They're all going through their own battles on the field, or like they're all having their own conversations with themselves. What was your personal conversation with yourself, like, in the lead up to the game and during the game even as well?
Yeah, I think for me it was just to get involved as early as I could in the game, and get my hand on the ball, or have as I said, get involved in the game. Maybe make a tackle or make a block, a hook, or something like that, just to get yourself involved in the game. Because once that happens, I think the game kind of goes from there. Then So I suppose that would always be the big thing. I wouldn't be one for overthinking or over-analysing things a huge amount. Like, once I know I've the work done and that kind of thing, I'm pretty happy. Like, I probably would have had a small look at the opposition during the week, like nothing too major. I don't like going into too much detail on that too, but just a few small bits, and having my own house in order too then. And as I said before, you've so much work done that you just want to let it out at that stage.
Do you have any kind of self-talk that happens in your head if you make a mistake on the pitch?
We would do all right. Yeah, and I suppose again that's just down to the experience, and that over 70 minutes you're going to make mistakes. Maybe you could be very lucky. You could have an absolute dream day that you don't make any mistakes. But mistakes are part and parcel of it. But I think once you're trying to do the right thing, you can kind of forgive yourself for the mistake, and you can get on with it. And you've no choice but to get on with it now. Because in a game like an All-Ireland semi-final or an All-Ireland final, it's so loud, it's so hectic. The next ball is going to come any second. That you actually don't have time to be worrying about it or thinking about it.
There seemed to be a point. I can't remember exactly what the time it was in the game, but there seemed to be a point in time where you just kind of caught fire and just seemed to take off then for the rest of the game. Did that happen at some stage? Did you feel like there was a change? Was it maybe even personally, or even just with the team? Just seemed to something happened. Obviously, the sending off had a big impact on the game, or I don't even know if it did. But
I think before the sending off, I think we'd kind of probably the first 20 minutes, again, we wouldn't have been happy with how we were playing or the way things were going. But I think after that, we kind of started to find our feet a bit and started to play a bit better. And I think we got a few scores, and Niall's goal, really gave us that bit of, kind of kicked us into gear then, I felt. And I felt around that time we were kind of starting to get a grip on things and starting to play the way we wanted to play and express ourselves a bit better. So I suppose around that period, I can't remember exactly, I haven't watched the game back around like that, but around the period of Niall's goal there, I felt that we were starting to, get on top and, starting to do things right.
You haven't watched the game back?
No, I haven't seen it back yet. No, I haven't. It was on in, I think, a few of the pubs we were in the week, maybe after All-Ireland, but I didn't get to see it properly.
Are you going to watch it?
I'll see. Maybe, at some stage, maybe I'll watch it and see. Yeah.
So, the final whistle then?
Yeah, final whistle is just, it's just if you could bottle moments in time, I suppose that's it. It goes back to when you started training and those nights when you were, the low nights as well, being dropped in 2014 or being taken off in games and losing games and things like that. And, you work so hard to get those moments that you just really want to enjoy them. So
what happened then? The final whistle goes and then everyone's just jumping on each other. Did you have specific memories from the aftermath of?
Yeah, I remember whatever way I ran. I think I ran into James Barry and the two Mahers, and that was about it really. But I remember then I knew I had spotted Mum and Dad and the family, brother and sister in the crowd just before the parade, and I just gave them a little nod
before the match.
Yeah, I'd always kind of whereabouts they're sitting, so I'd always kind of just see look, they've got here, they're safe now, they're all right, kind of a thing. And so I knew they were around there, so I ran over there, made their way down to the barrier, and just seeing their faces, just it hits home a small bit. Really, Mum, Dad, Maeve, Sean, or girlfriend and Nana, to see them, and they were I suppose I'd been in and out of the team this year, so would have been going home in shit form, and you try not to be, but I suppose Mum and Dad are in Clonmel and they're meeting people all the time and they're wondering, and people are asking them, what's going on, and they're saying they don't know, and to meet them afterwards, they were emotional, and then they've sacrificed so much for myself and for Maeve and Sean as well, that you've repaid them some bit anyway.
I was up in Thurles visiting Carver in the few days after the game, and one thing that struck me is that every shop is decked out in in the tip colours. There's there was a car that drove past us that had a life-size teddy bear that was dressed in tip gear, it had a tip hat, the tip jersey, everything, and it just seemed it affects every aspect of life whenever this happens. Like, and I just kind of got thinking that it's such a positive thing to happen to a community. Like, there's not many other things that create such an influx of positive vibes into a community, and that must be great for like just day-to-day life and people's, you know, like health and mental health and the
absolutely.
happiness that it brings to them.
Like, even meeting some of the older people in the club or some of the older people in Clonmel that I've met since, and, you know, like, geez, we'll have a short winter now, you know, like, and it's just, they're absolutely delighted walking around, like, and the lift it gives to people, I suppose it hits home, like, you know, that like this is actually, you know, like this is special, like, you know, what you're actually doing in a way, and how lucky we are that we can, you know, give days like that to people. You know, like I was a kid in the stand in 2010, like jumping up and down, leaping and roaring, you know, when Lara scored the 3 goals, like, and, you know, like that, you know, made me want to go play for Tip, you know, and that kind of thing. And I suppose it's just, as you said, like, it lifts everything in the county, like not just the hurling, but it lifts a whole community and people, like.
Well, actually, we'll have to give your cousin Tom a shout out as well.
Tom, yeah. He'd be
still
delighted.
Listening. He could have turned it off by now. He may be sick of you.
Oh yeah, Tom is from Newcastle, so his dad, my dad are brothers, and they grew up on the farm in Newcastle. So they have a younger brother, Will, and older brother, Richard, and sister Marie. So Tom and Will would have been close enough to me in age, so would have been over there a lot in the garden, poking around and that kind of thing as well. And they'd have played with Newcastle. So yeah, massive into the hurling as well. And Tom's, I think was it the semi-final, he was telling me, whatever the time difference was, I think he left his phone off all day or on airplane mode or delete all his apps, so that he went and worked his full day's work, came home, and then watched the Wexford match, so that he wouldn't know. Or I think it was, I know, you know, he did the day off for the final, all right, but the Wexford game, so didn't look at anything all day and went home and watched the match from scratch, you know, that kind of like, he loves his hurling, Tom, in fairness, like, and it's probably tough enough. And your way, he got home from Australia for the 2016 final, but he's a young family now, himself and Kelly, so, you know, can't be up and leaving like that all the time.
Yeah, the reason that obviously that I know about Tom is because he's been listening to the podcast.
Yeah, he's a big fan of the podcast. Yeah, he is. So they're getting him through the work or on his journeys to and from work down in Brizzy. So yeah, no, Tom's a great fella, and he'll enjoy this one as well, I'd say. He'll enjoy the shout out anyway.
Yeah. Class, so it's only been a couple of weeks after the All Ireland, and you're still training, like you were in the gym doing a bit tonight and back with the club as well. What's the rest of the year looking like for you now? Just
I suppose got knocked out of the club hurling actually, unfortunately, last Saturday, so it's all football for me now for the next couple of weeks. We got bet in the county semi-final last year by a point or two, so, you know, hopefully might try and put that right. It's 2 years, it'll be 2 years this year now since we won the last county final, so please God now we'll get another run in the club championship. And so that's pretty much it. I'll stay training away, working here in Cork as well. So look, as I said, like, we're so involved during the year with Tip that there's times you don't get to meet people you'd like to as much, like as the lads from college or, you know, the lads in the club. So, you know, looking forward to catching up with them a bit now the next couple of weeks and months as well.
Like, is there an afterglow were you just like walking around on air after winning All Ireland?
Yeah, look, it's there was like the last couple of weeks, like, as you said, every person you meet is just on cloud 9 over Tip winning the All Ireland. So, like, I suppose it's infectious. Like, you're just in good form and you're meeting people that are in good form and people that are absolutely delighted. So yeah, look, you are on cloud 9 a bit, and we'll enjoy it for the couple of weeks that's in it, you know, that kind of way. And
where is Liam McCarthy now?
Who knows? He's doing the rounds, I suppose. Like, it's probably doing the rounds of the schools at the minute, like, and that's very special as well. I went back to Hurler CBS last Friday, and you know, as you said, like, your teachers in the school is such an influence on your career, and that it is so nice to be able to go back. I hadn't been back there since I got my leaving cert results, you know, so it was a bit weird. I'm still calling Miss and Sir and all that, but yeah, looking forward to bringing the cup to the Gael Skull and Gael Flush Caton as well, you know, so it's special to bring it back and bringing it out home maybe some evening.
As we mentioned, the connection between Antrim and Tipperary, and Carver has been in doing the S&C with you as well, and I think that this could be a good pub quiz question, but I think that Carver is probably the first Antrim man ever to lift Liam McCarthy in the Hogan stand. I don't know if anyone else from Antrim has done that.
Jeez, I don't know now.
So
I'm not
we
sure.
have like photographic evidence of it.
Yeah. Well deserved too.
I guess we can finish up now. We're to put this in context for people, like we're sitting in a dining room with loads of candles and stuff. It's very romantic.
Very romantic, yeah.
It's the most romantic podcast yet. But it's been class, and I've kind of had it in mind to maybe that we could do a podcast for a while. So thanks a million for coming and do it and stuff.
No, thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks for everything.
It's a pleasure. And that's it. So let's wrap it up. Gurmina Margaret. And I hope we'll be doing. Actually, I think you coming and do a session in the gym tomorrow morning.
Yeah, in the morning. Yeah, whatever you've laid out for me. So I'll try to keep up with you this time.
Class. Okay, Gurmina Margaret. What did you think about that, a Cardigan? I have to say, from a personal level, these kind of chats make me very happy to be alive. I bloody love doing this podcast and sitting down with people and having chats with them and finding out what drove them, the challenges they had, how they overcome them, sharing personal stories and having a bit of a laugh on the podcast episodes. So thanks a million to Seamus for taking the time out of his day, or out of his night rather. We recorded this episode between 8:30 and 10 o'clock at night. And then, as you might have picked up from the end of the chat, met up the morning after at about 6:15 in the morning to do a session in the gym. And I think that is a testament to Seamus's commitment and dedication as an athlete, that he's back in the gym, topping up his strength levels already. And as he was mentioning already, he's in full flow with the club still as well. So again, Gurached Mila Margaret to Seamus, and Gurached Mila Margaret to all of you for listening, and a special shout out to everyone again who's been supporting the podcast on Patreon. If you want to become a supporter, a patron of the podcast, then go to rebelmatters.ie and you'll find a little button there that you can click on, and it'll bring you straight to the Patreon page, and that's where you can support the podcast if you want to. And you can also support the podcast by sharing this episode around, sending me a message, getting in touch, and telling all your mates to come and listen to the Rebel Matters podcast. So that's it for this week, nearly. I'm going to play the outro music here, and as I mentioned earlier, if you want to hang around for a little bit of story time, then let the outro music play out, and then you'll hear me reading a bit of Roald Dahl's boyhood memories right into your ear holes. So, a Cardigan, be me a Kaint Liv Galua, Slán go Fáil, Kenny Fury, Agus Chucky Arla. This is a chapter called Going to Norway from the Roald Dahl book called Boy Tales of Childhood. The summer holidays, those magic words, the mere mention of them used to send shivers of joy rippling over my skin. All of my summer holidays, from when I was 4 years old to when I was 17, which was 1920 to 1932, were totally idyllic. This, I am certain, was because we always went to the same idyllic place, and that place was Norway. Except for my ancient half-sister and my not-so-ancient half-brother, the rest of us were all pure Norwegian by blood. We all spoke Norwegian, and all our relations lived over there. So in a way, going to Norway every summer was like going home. Even the journey was an event. Don't forget that there were no commercial airplanes in those times, so it took us 4 whole days to complete the trip out and another 4 days to get home again. We were always an enormous party. There were my 3 sisters and my ancient half-sister, that's 4, and my half-brother and me, that's 6, and my mother, that's 7, and Nanny, that's 8, and in addition to these, there were never less than 2 others who were some sort of anonymous ancient friends of the ancient half-sister. That's 10 altogether. Looking back on it now, I don't know how my mother did it. There were all those train bookings and boat bookings and hotel bookings to be made in advance by letter. She had to make sure that we had enough shorts and shirts and sweaters and gym shoes and bathing costumes. You couldn't even buy a shoelace on the island where we were going to. And the packing must have been a nightmare. 6 huge trunks were carefully packed, as well as countless suitcases, and when the great departure day arrived, the 10 of us, together with our mountains of luggage, would set out on the first and easiest step of the journey, the train to London. When we arrived in London, we tumbled into 3 taxis and went clattering across the great city to King's Cross, where we got on the train for Newcastle, 200 miles to the north. The trip to Newcastle took about 5 hours, and when we arrived there, we needed 3 more taxis to take us from the station to the docks where our boat would be waiting. The next stop after that would be Oslo, the capital of Norway. When I was young, the capital of Norway was not called Oslo, it was called Christiania. But somewhere along the line, the Norwegians decided to do away with that pretty name and call it Oslo instead. As children, we always knew it as Christiania, but if I call it that here, we shall only get confused, so I'd better stick to Oslo all the way through. The sea journey from Newcastle to Oslo took 2 days and a night, and if it was rough, as often it was, all of us got seasick except for our dauntless mother. We used to lie in deck chairs on the promenade deck, within easy reach of the rails, embalmed in rugs, our faces slate grey and our stomachs churning, refusing the hot soup and ship's biscuits the kindly steward kept offering us. And as for poor Nanny, she began to feel sick the moment she set foot on deck. I hate these things, he used to say. I'm sure we'll never get there. Which lifeboat do we go on to when it starts to sink? Then she would retire to her cabin, where she stayed groaning and trembling until the ship was firmly tied up in the quayside in Oslo harbour the next day. We always stopped off for one night in Oslo, so that we could have a grand annual family reunion with Bestemma and Bestemama and Bestepapa, our mother's parents, and with her 2 maiden sisters, our aunts, who lived in the same house. When we got off the boat, we all went in a cavalcade of taxis straight to the Grand Hotel, where we would sleep one night to drop off our luggage. Then, keeping the same taxis, we drove on to the grandparents' house, where an emotional welcome awaited us. All of us were embraced and kissed many times, and tears flowed down wrinkled old cheeks, and suddenly that quiet, gloomy house came alive with many children's voices. Ever since I first saw her, Bestemama was terrifically ancient. She was a white-haired, wrinkly-faced old bird who seemed always to be sitting in her rocking chair, rocking away and smiling benignly at this vast influx of grandchildren who barged in from miles away to take over her house for a few hours every year. Bestepapa was the quiet one. He was a small, dignified scholar with a white goatee beard, and as far as I could gather, he was also an astrologer, a meteorologist, and a speaker of ancient Greek. Like Bestemama, he sat most of the time quietly in a chair, saying very little and totally overwhelmed, I imagine, by the raucous rabble who were destroying his neat and polished home. The 2 things I remember most about Bestepapa were that he wore black boots and that he smoked an extraordinary pipe. The bowl of his pipe was made of meerschaum clay, and it had a flexible stem of about 3 foot long, so that the bowl rested on his lap. All the grown-ups, including Nanny, and all the children, even when the youngest was only a year old, sat down around a big oval dining room table on the afternoon of our arrival for the great annual celebration feast with the grandparents, and the food we received never varied. This was a Norwegian household, and for the Norwegians, the best food in the world is fish. And when they say fish, they don't mean the sort of thing that you and I get from the fishmonger. They mean fresh fish. Fish that's been caught no more than 24 hours before and has never been frozen or chilled or on a block of ice. I agree with them that the proper way to prepare fish like this is to poach it, and that is what they do with the finest specimens. And Norwegians, by the way, always eat the skin of the boiled fish, which they say has the best taste of all. So naturally, this great celebration feast started with fish, a massive fish, A flounder as big as a tea tray and as thick as your arm was brought to the table. It had nearly black skin on top, which was covered with brilliant orange spots, and it had, of course, been perfectly poached. Large white hunks of this fish were carved out and put onto our plates, and with it we all had hollandaise sauce and boiled new potatoes. Nothing else, and by gosh, it was delicious. As soon as the remains of the fish had been cleared away, a tremendous craggy mountain of homemade ice cream would be carried in. Apart from being the creamiest ice cream in the world, the flavour was unforgettable. There were thousands of little chips of crisp burnt toffee mixed into it. The Norwegians call it krokan, and as a result, it didn't simply melt in your mouth like ordinary ice cream. You chewed it and it went crunch, and the taste was something you dreamed about for days afterwards. The great feast would be interrupted by small speeches of welcome from my grandfather, and the grown-ups would raise their long-stemmed wine glasses and say "Skål" many times throughout the meal. When the guzzling was over, those who were considered old enough were given small glasses of homemade liqueur, a colourless but fiery drink that smelled of mulberries. The glasses were raised again and again, and the scaling seemed to go on forever. In Norway, you may select any individual around a table and skål him or her in a small private ceremony. You first lift your glass high and call on the name. Betsamama, you say "Skål, Betsamama." She will then lift her own glass and hold it up high. At the same time, your own eyes meet hers, and you must keep looking deep into her eyes as you sip your drink. After you've both done this, you raise your glasses high up again in a sort of silent final salute, and only then does each person look away and set down his glass. It's a serious and solemn ceremony, and as a rule, on formal occasion, everyone skåls everyone else around the table once. If there are, for example, 10 people present, and you're one of them, you will skål your 9 companions once, each individually, and you yourself will also receive 9 separate skåls at different times during the meal. 18 in all. That's how they work it in polite society over there. At least they used to in the old days. And quite a business it was. By the time I was 10, I would be permitted to take part in these ceremonies, and I always finished up as tipsy as a lord. The Magic Island. The next morning, everyone got up early and eager to continue the journey. There was another full day's travelling to be done before we reached our final destination, most of it by boat. So after a rapid breakfast, our cavalcade left the Grand Hotel in 3 more taxis and headed for Oslo docks. There we went on board a small coastal steamer, and Nanny was heard to say, "I'm sure it leaks. We shall all be food for the fishes before the day is out." Then she would disappear below for the rest of the trip. We loved this part of the journey. The splendid little vessel with its single tall funnel would move out into the calm waters of the fjord and proceed at a leisurely pace along the coast, stopping every hour or so at a small wooden jetty where a group of villagers and summer people would be waiting to welcome friends or to collect parcels and mail. Unless you sail down the Oslo fjord like this yourself on a tranquil summer's day, you cannot imagine what it's like. It's impossible to describe the sensation of absolute peace and beauty that surrounds you. The boat weaves in and out between countless tiny islands, some with small brightly painted wooden houses on them, but many with not a house or a tree on the bare rocks. These granite rocks are so smooth that you can lie and sun yourself on them in your bathing costume without putting a towel underneath. We would see long-legged girls and tall boys basking on the rocks of the islands. There are no sandy beaches on the fjord. The rocks go straight down to the water's edge, and the water is immediately deep. As a result, Norwegian children all learn to swim when they're very young, because if you can't swim, it's difficult to find a place to bathe. Sometimes, when our little vessel slipped between the 2 small islands, the channel was so narrow we could almost touch the rocks on either side. We would pass rowboats and canoes with flaxen-haired children in them, their skins browned by the sun, and we would wave to them and watch their tiny boats rocking violently in the swell that our larger ship left behind. Late in the afternoon, we would come finally to the end of the journey, the island of Tjum. That's where our mother always took us. Heaven knows how she found it, but to us it was the greatest place on earth. About 200 yards from the jetty, along a narrow dusty road, stood a simple wooden hotel painted white. It was run by an elderly couple whose faces I still remember vividly, and every year they welcomed us like old friends. Everything about the hotel was extremely primitive, except the dining room. The walls, the ceiling and the floor of our bedrooms were made of plain unvarnished pine planks. There was a wash basin and a jug of cold water in each of them. The lavatories were in a rickety wooden outhouse at the back of the hotel, and each cubicle contained nothing more than a round hole cut in a piece of wood. You sat on the hole, and what you did there dropped into a pit 10 feet below. If you looked down the hole, you would often see rats scurrying about in the gloom. All of this we took for granted. Breakfast was the best meal of the day in our hotel, and it was all laid out on a huge table in the middle of the dining room from which you helped yourself. There were maybe 50 different dishes to choose from on the table. There were large jugs of milk which all Norwegian children drink at every meal. There were plates of cold beef, veal, ham and pork. There was also cold boiled mackerel submerged in aspic. There were spiced and pickled herring fillets, sardines, smoked eels and cod's roe. There was a large bowl piled high with hot boiled eggs. There were cold omelettes with chopped ham in them, and cold chicken and hot coffee for the grown-ups, and hot crisp rolls baked in the hotel kitchen, which we ate with butter and cranberry jam. There were stewed apricots and 5 or 6 different cheeses, including of course the ever-present Gjetost, that tall, brown, rather sweet Norwegian goat's cheese which you find on just about every table in the land. After breakfast we collected our bathing things and the whole party, all 10 of us, would pile into our boat. Everyone has some sort of a boat in Norway. Nobody sits around in front of the hotel, nor does anyone sit on the beach because there aren't any beaches to sit on. In the early days we had only a rowboat, but a very fine one it was. It carried all of us easily, with places for 2 rowers. My mother took one pair of oars and my fairly ancient half-brother took the other, and off we would go. My mother and the half-brother, he was somewhere around 18 then, were expert rowers. They kept in perfect time and the oars went click, 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 click in their wooden rowlocks, and the rowers never paused once during the 40-minute journey. The rest of us sat in the boat, trilling our fingers in the clear water and looking for jellyfish. We skimmed across the sound and went whizzing through narrow channels with rocky islands on either side, heading as always for a very secret tiny patch of sand on a distant island that only we knew about. In the early days we needed a place like this where we could paddle and play about because my youngest sister was only 1. The next sister was 3 and I was 4. The rocks and the deep water were no good to us. Every day for several summers, that tiny secret sand patch on that tiny secret island was our regular destination. We would stay there for 3 or 4 hours, messing about in the water and in the rock pools and getting extraordinarily sunburnt. In later years, when we were all a little older and could swim, the daily routine became different. By then, my mother had acquired a motorboat, a small and not very seaworthy white wooden vessel which sat far too low in the water and was powered by an unreliable 1-cylinder engine. The fairly ancient half-brother was the only one who could make the engine go at all. It was extremely difficult to start and he always had to unscrew the sparking plug and pour petrol into the cylinder. Then he swung a flywheel around and round, and with a bit of luck, after a lot of coughing and spluttering, the thing would finally get going. When we first acquired the motorboat, my youngest sister was 4 and I was 7, and by then all of us had learnt to swim. The exciting new boat made it possible for us to go to much further afield, and every day we would travel far out into the fjord, hunting for a different island. There were hundreds of them to choose from. Some were very small, no more than 30 yards long. Others were quite large, maybe half a mile in length. It was wonderful to have such a choice of places, and it was a terrific fun to explore each island before we went swimming off the rocks. There were wooden skeletons of shipwrecked boats on those islands, and big white bones. Were they human bones? And wild raspberries and mussels clinging to the rocks, and some of the islands had shaggy long-haired goats in them, and even sheep. Now and again, when we were out in the open water beyond the chain of islands, the sea became very rough, and that was when my mother enjoyed herself most. Nobody, not even the tiny children, bothered with lifebelts in those days. We would cling to the sides of our funny little white motorboat, driving through mountainous white-capped waves and getting drenched to the skin, while my mother calmly handled the tiller. There were times, I promise you, when the waves were so high that as we slid down into a trough, the whole world disappeared from sight. Then up and up the little boat would climb, standing almost vertically on its tail, until we reached the crest of the next wave, and then it was like being on top of a foaming mountain. It requires great skill to handle a small boat in seas like these. The thing can easily capsize or be swamped if the bows do not meet at the great combing breakers at just the right angle. But my mother knew exactly how to do it, and we were never afraid. We loved every minute of it, all of us, except for our long-suffering Nanny, who would bury her face in her hands and call aloud upon the Lord to save her soul. In the early evenings, we nearly always went out fishing. We collected mussels from the rocks for bait. Then we got into either the rowboat or the motorboat and pushed off to drop anchor later in some likely spot. The water was very deep, and often we had to let out 200 feet of line before we touched bottom. We would sit silent and tense, waiting for a bite, and it always amazed me how even a little nibble at the end of that long line would be transmitted to one's fingers. "A bite," someone would shout, jerking the line. "I've got him! It's a big one! It's a whopper!" And then came the thrill of hauling in the line, hand over hand, and peering over the side into the clear water to see how big the fish really was as he neared the surface. Cod, whiting, haddock and mackerel, we caught them all and bore them back triumphantly to the hotel kitchen, where the cheery fat woman who did the cooking promised to get them ready for our supper. I tell you, my friends, those were the days.